Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Zulu's Painting Show, the show where I, Rob, take you through as much of my knowledge of painting as I have to give to you. I generally oscillate between Dungeons & Dragons miniatures and Battletech miniatures. Today, we're on our Dungeons & Dragons miniatures. If you're here 2 weeks ago, I started painting. I got into the weeds of painting a goblin who has in one hand a spear, in another hand a frog, and a frog on his head. And after much ado, we're going to finally get to painting those frogs, which I'm very excited for. Let's go ahead and switch down to our top-down camera. This is our goblin with frogs. As you can see, the frog on his head and the frog in his hand have sort of become difficult to distinguish. A little bit of my contrast paints has gotten on the frog there, on both of them in fact, and they're not particularly interesting. Ooh, we also, the other things we have to finish on this guy is he has on each of his ankles and wrists, he has some adornment. We're going to do those. He's got his necklace here, which I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be, but I think I've decided I want to make it a metallic. So this he's got this one anklet here that looks like it's sort of more metallic in nature. So we're gonna use the same metals there. We've got this little bone here. So we've got a lot of little things to do, but nothing that's going to be a very sort of labor intensive. I've actually pulled out most of the paints we're going to be using. So these ones here. I'll be going over them as we paint through them. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive right in. As always, we got our trusty wet palette here. We've got the dry palette here, which we're gonna probably use for our metallics, just because I think that's probably for the best. And in fact, I think let's go ahead and dive into the metals first. So our first metal today we're going to be using is a what is this? Hachette copper. It looks like. The reason I'm doing the copper is because I really want to use my oxidizer. Oxide, the technical paint that makes it look like it has gotten all rusty, which is very fun. So let's go ahead and dive into that. I've pre-shook all of these because I was trying to figure out which ones I wanted to use, but we got to give them another good vigorous shake just to make extra sure. The hum you hear in the background is one of those nice little auto shakers. I'm playing around with that, seeing how I like it. So as always with the Citadel paints, to get them out of their pot, what I will do is I will take the back of a sort of skinnier brush, so just grab a chunk of it, and then roll it onto the palette. So I've been noticing that my metallics on my wet palette seem to, the metal seems to just run away. So we're going to be going ahead and just use the dry palette for it, plus the metallics mixed with my non-metallics, and I don't like that. Speaking of mixing and not mixing, we're going to use our metallics water, because the reason metallic paints are metallic is because they have little flakes of metal in them. And if you've ever worked with, what was this, glitter before, you know exactly why you try to keep that glitter as far away from other things as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and use the starter brush from the Army Painter starter kit. You'll notice that I have a handful of these Army Painter paints. Those are all from that kit. Get a little bit of water on our brush. My mic is right in the way of my palette. There we go. Get a little bit in there. Always want to remember to thin your paints. Metallics, though, you do need to be a little careful on how much you thin them. If you thin them too much, they tend to separate. And then we'll just go ahead and dive right in. And as you can already see, you can still sort of see that green coming in through. If you really want to control the colors of your metallics, you can do a little, you do an undercoat. So for something like a copper, starting with like a gray or a black or white, usually does pretty well to help with that color. I'm okay with having this the undercoat of green, just because we'll be putting some other stuff on it. I'm going to put a couple layers on it, so it should be fine. I also have to remember where my focus point is. A manual focus on the camera, which is helpful sometimes and annoying other times. There we go. That's in focus. Oh. Perfect. So then his necklace thing, I think you could probably paint it as a frog head if you wanted. I don't, because I don't know. I think it's more fun to have him have this kind of this splash of metallic on his chest, especially with how sort of organic everything else he has is. I'm gonna go over that rope with a different color, but I'm just trying to not soak it in paint. Remember, you want to keep your coats thin so you don't lose the detail in your guy. And again, these are definitely going to need a couple of layers. It's always hard to make sure you get the full sort of all sides of a sort of cylindrical shape like this without getting the surface that it's next to. Where is my focal point? Is it right here? There we go. That sounded pretty nice. Oh. The challenge we're running into now is because we're getting close to the end of the paint job, it becomes more sort of tedious to go back and fix colors. So I'm really trying to make sure that I don't have to go back and do a lot of fixing on these. I also kind of like the idea of this goblin having this sort of metallic necklace with this hole here to that he could have hung it by, but instead he just tied it to his chest. What's nice is when we put the corrosion on, it'll bring out a little bit more of those details. That's fun. Yeah. Also, I need to... Please focus, camera. Oh, hey, there we go. Much better. That's at a workable distance, but it's actually focused. All right. Looks about right. So let's go ahead and, like I said, this is gonna be a lot of different colors, but pretty quick on most of them. Don't forget to clean your brush. And then we're gonna switch our waters back. Now we're gonna go to the fun one. So this is one of the technical paints. It functions in a lot of ways like a wash, but it dries with a very sort of interesting texture to it. I've used it a bunch, and I really enjoy the look of it. We're gonna use. We'll probably just use the our regiment brush to apply it. It's a bit. The brush is a bit big for doing sort of detail work, but I also don't want to just glob this stuff on because the metal we're working with is relatively small. Having a little bit more precision will be nice, but you also need to be able to fill the brush with enough of the paint to be able to get it on there. So it's that fun balance. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and dive in. And again, you're painting this guy on much like a wash. And it has sort of a wash dry time, so you have a little extra time to work with it. Oh, and we got that rope. It's a shame. That's okay. I'll come back through and clean that up here in a little bit. All right, now because I don't want too much of this stuff on here, I'm clean out the brush. so it doesn't have any paint on it, and then we're just going to come in and sort of soak up the extra on a couple spots. We don't want it really caked in there. And in the same sort of technique that's used to get the paint from the pot to the brush, you use to get the paint from your surface off again. So you just got to make sure the brush isn't filled with something else. Oh, almost missed a spot. And then you're good to go. There we go. Now he has some nice corroded looking metal parts on him. I figured goblins aren't really the sort to really have, particularly clean metals. So having a little bit more sort of corroded stuff makes sense to me. That being said, you could have quite fastidious goblins. But I figure if his spear is sort of rusted as it is, then it would make sense also for his other metals to be rusted. Although you could be telling a story, why does that goblin have a particularly clean and interesting piece of metal on him? Is it something that he stole recently? Is it something that is magical enough that it doesn't corrode? These are the questions that you get to answer in your paint jobs. All right, so that's the metal. So let's go ahead and get his other ankle parts, the bones, and that rope if it's dried enough. So for all of these, what we're going to be doing is we're going to get our base layer, and then we're going to be doing, so the wraps and the bones we're going to sort of finish slightly differently. And so that'll, while it still has the same base color, they'll have a different sort of end result, which I'm excited for. So go ahead and start with that. For this particular one, we're going to start with a dollop of white. Put that onto our wet palette. And then we're going to grab a little bit of brown. We're going to do kind of a one-to-one mix for this, because we want it to be, oh gosh, a little extra paint on the nozzle of my paint pot. So I want this to be not as dark as this brown, but not as light as the white, so we're going to go ahead and just do kind of a one-to-one. It's always an interesting balance for mixing paints on the wet palette, because you don't want to mix it too vigorously, because then you'll go through your surface. You also, I don't generally like to mix my paints with my brush, because then I just fill the brush with the paint. There we go. We don't want it marbled, so we gotta make sure it's a nice even mix. There we go. See, a little bit lighter. I think it'll help a lot for our establishing color. Generally, when I'm painting things, I like to start darker and then lighten up. You could, if you wanted. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and stick with my starter brush because I think it's about the right. Well, do I want to go the regiment brush? Yeah, I think I'm gonna go to the regiment brush. So you can definitely start dark and light and then darken out. But I just find that a lot of the techniques that I've learned really sort of lean towards the start dark, lighten. So such a little bump around his ankle. Oh no. Oh no, it is. There's more there. Okay. We're gonna definitely need to watch this to bring these details out, because I was having a hard time seeing those. If you find yourself putting a color on a thing and losing your details, it could be because your paint is too thick, which you've always got to be mindful of, but it could also just be because of the fact that as paint goes onto a thing and it becomes sort of a single flat color, it's easier to sort of lose the details of the model. Now, for these sort of cloth wraps and these bones, I'm going to use the same base color, but as we go, they'll change. I'll sort of show you how to, using the same base color, make two distinct colors. And for these bones, I might need a slightly small. You know what? These bones are too small. So we upgrade or size change. I'm going to go to our character brush. Oh, there it is, character brush. All right. So what I'm doing here is I am, as I fill my brush with paint, I'm then spinning it along my palette to sort of to regulate how much paint is on there, and then also to get a nice sharp tip on my brush. So this color, actually, if I was doing another layer on the loincloth, this color would actually probably be a really good one for it. And I might do that if we have time. But my priority right now is to get the frogs done. Oh, man, this. Make sure I'm in a good position. The other thing to remember about a slightly smaller brush is you'll have less paint in your bristles, which means it will dry out faster, which, especially with the heat that we've been having, is a particularly important detail to remember. Hope everyone was able to stay cool this weekend. It was pretty miserable here, but managed to hold out. It's looking good. Got that kind of started. Gotta get that center of his chest bone. No. I guess it's his belt bone. Which, I mean, I feel like we should all have, right? You know? Hold our pants up with a random leg bone that we found. Not that I find leg bones on a regular basis, but if we were goblins, I suppose. There we go. See, now what's a lot of fun is, especially when we're getting to this sort of end step, we're getting a lot of the details that are really sort of showing up. A lot of things that we've sort of been glossing over. Now we can finally give each of the different parts sort of their focus that they deserve. So there we go. We've got that bone, which means we can then go to the wrists. Now, one of the things we could have done is, since he has these leather straps on his spear, we could have made the wraps on the wrist and ankles that same material. But I like the idea of a slightly, I like the idea of this being a fabric that had at one point been like a nice white, like a gauze, like an ace bandage kind of thing, and they just, over the days, weeks, months, is dirtied up just a little bit. And again, we've got that undercoat of green, so we got to make sure we do a couple of thin coats to be able to make sure that it's not feeling green again. Now we got these ones that are very tight. Also, I feel like doing the leather as the wraps on the spear and the wrists so close to each other wouldn't create a very sort of interesting look. Part of, I think, the appeal of these goblins is they're sort of all over the place. So having it really be sort of just a hodgepodge of colors, I think, adds to the sort of manicness of the goblin itself. He's He's a very full of energy little goblin. This up just a little. Alright. Also, I like to, on occasion, just clean off my brush while I'm working. I find that constantly refilling it with paint can sometimes get it sort of gummed up, but also remember that it'll get water on here sometimes, and then as soon as you raise your brush up, it'll drop the water down, which will sort of change your paint to water mixture. So a thing to be aware of. We're making progress. Just another quick brush over here. Again, trying to maintain that the details, but then also not have the green show up through it. Now that this is dried enough, I have the very fun process of trying to very carefully get this tiny, tiny rope. As much fun as just a green rope is, I want to make it kind of brown. Ugh. So tiny. So what I'm doing is basically just letting the upraised part of the of this model be what's catching the brush. Oh, you know, honestly, that green rope might have been more interesting. I'm sort of losing the rope now. You know what? Kind of like the green rope better. All right. So what it could be is that's not actually a rope at all, but rather just some detailing on some detail work on the metal itself. So let's go ahead and go back over, and we're going to reapply this to it. And I also noticed that I kind of got too much off of here, so reapply there as well. Right. There we go. Much, but yeah, I think that works a little better. Have it just be some detail on the thing. It also makes more sense that he actually did use the clasp up at the top. So there we go. There we go. Better. Perfect. So that's one of the things that I always like to try and remember when I'm painting, is that there's nothing that's really been sort of set in stone. So, and so much of it is how it, I guess how it looks, but how it feels when you're looking at it, which is, I know, not very helpful for sort of getting started. But you know, if you're looking at something and think to yourself, well, this doesn't feel right, then that's okay. People are, let's see, conversation. Sorry, I have people trying to talk on Facebook, which is making it so I can't see your guys' comments. There we go. Now I can see again. All right, so we've got our fabric on here. So to bring those details out, because there's a lot of fun sort of fabric details, we're going to go ahead and use some Agrax Earthshade. This is a nice dark wash, but it's also very brown, which is the color that I'm going for. I don't really want to go, like, the Nuln Oil is the darkest of the washes, but sorry about that. But it's not really the color I'm wanting to go for this particular one. So I want brown. So I'm going to grab, head back to our regiment brush to be able to fill this guy up. Again, we don't need to use the monster brush for this one, just because we are washing sort of specific spots. Yeah, nice dirty wash. Yeah, that's already bringing back out those details of like the fabric there. Gotta remember to get the bottom. Oh, a little bit on his skirt. All right, so that is the wraps. But now what we're gonna do is, so we took our color and we sort of darkened it up a little bit. Now we're gonna take that same color, I'm gonna lighten it for the highlights. It's gonna show how you can play around. Same color, slightly different techniques, very different results. Close this guy back up. Don't forget to always close your paints, or they will end up on your paint surface. We're going to go just with a good old-fashioned matte white, which is always really hard to read on the screen. For some reason, the dynamic range for this camera is not great, so I'm just going to slap it down here. We don't need a lot, just a little dollop. We're going to go back to our character brush for this one, because we're just going to do very small details on this. We're just going to do just little bits of highlights. So what's interesting about paint and color and sort of how your eye interprets it is by putting two colors sort of next to each other, it'll sometimes make it look like it's a third color that's sort of between the two. So for this one, we're going to be doing is just putting a little bit of white just on the very sort of edges, sort of nubbins of the bone. Where is it? I'm trying to find, there we go. I'm trying to find where the good focus is. There we go. So yeah, you're just getting just a little bit, just right there on the sort of the top of the nubbins, letting the bottom stay, or the other parts stay that nice color. And yeah, there you go. Oh, see, it's already made it so that it's difficult to, let me try if I turn down the, yep, that's a little easier to see. And the contrast between sort of this guy here, who has that same base color, but this got washed and this got a little bit of white added to it, and you've created two very different colors, which I very much enjoy. Yeah, I think, ooh, I'm really, you know what? I'm really saving those frogs for last. Let's go ahead and do the frogs next. We'll do those. We'll try to finish up those eyes as the sort of very last thing we do. And we're burning through this, so I might finish this a little sooner than not. We'll see. If that's true, then we can work a little bit on the base, which I've completely neglected. I don't know if it's for laziness or just. So a lot of times I'll try to put flocking and things on the bases, but having a color on here is still very helpful. Because the flocking doesn't cover 100%, so it's nice to have a little extra out. So yeah, I'll play around with it. We'll see. We got some other details that we can work here and there if we end up having extra time. And that's always the thing with these guys is how much you end up getting done really depends on how much time you have. For me, anyway. All right, so for the frog on the top of his head, I want a really sort of heavy contrast on there. So I'm going to make the frog, the main part of the frog is going to be black, with then some blue spots on his head frog. For his hand frog, the whole thing is going to be purple, but with red limbs. I like these. The idea is that this guy has these sort of poisoned frogs that he has been ingesting, giving him power? Question mark. So well, let's go ahead and dive into it. We're going to start with our nice matte black. Give it a quick shake. Make sure it's well mixed. Again, small dollop on the wet palette. Don't need to go too crazy. Might need more than that, but you know what? Let's do a little more than that because we're trying to cover the whole frog. Oh gosh. Got some extra paint in the nozzle. No, dirty nozzle. There we go. There we go. Doesn't help that it's bubbling on me. All right. So for this one, because we're doing a kind of a bigger chunk, we're going to go back to our regiment brush. Although we're probably going to end up with the character brush because on the sides of his head are the arms of the frog. We got a little bit of flash that we didn't clean, which I should have, but you know what? There are 4 of these guys, and they're goblins, so what can you do? Although the amount of time I've spent on this. That's okay. And we're just going to take this whole frog and turn him black. Being very careful not to turn any of the rest of the goblin black, because we're going back now would be sort of a pain. And even black, as dark as it is as a color, doesn't cover completely. But again, that's okay. Having a couple of layers is what you want. We're in such close quarters, and that spear is right in the way. So the angle to get in here to paint is not the easiest one. Ironically, I think the spear is also just getting in the way of my light, which makes it hard to paint. Same thing that in some ways makes it hard for you guys to see. Makes it so that it's harder for me not to see. Not to see? I don't know what I'm saying. Sorry. When I get to the spots where I'm really concentrating on not getting the colors in the wrong place, because I really don't want this black on his eyes, it's hard for me to talk, and then I say nonsense because I don't want to leave dead air. So instead of leaving dead air, I just fill it with madness. There we go. Nice frog. Alright, down the sides of his head. His little froggy arms sideburns, which I thoroughly enjoy. Froggy arm sideburns. See, this is, you know what? This is when I should definitely switch to my character brush so I don't just mush things all over the place. Don't want to mess up now. Let's go into their character brush. That's why I like having multiple brushes sort of at my disposal, so you can use the right brush for the right situation. Let's see. Also, it's another one of those situations where when you begin painting the part, you sort of see the level of detail that they put into the sculpting, and I'll be honest, this little frog hand is not the most detailed bit. Also, it now looks like he has a little froggy helmet, which is great. You know what? I'm definitely needing to use this blue to bring those fingers back out. That is, Black and I have, like, trying to paint with Black and I have just not really gotten along. Like, there's so many little, it eats up all the details, and I'm so used to using washes, and I feel like as soon as I start putting other colors on, it doesn't look like black, but it looks like a very dark version of the other color. So now you can really see that. That bit of flash on there. So if you ever wondered why those are there, when models are being made, they're put into a mold that must be split in half. Now, generally, those molds are held together with extreme pressure, and then the material is sort of pushed into it, either through centripetal force or through pressure. Now, if for some reason the mold isn't exactly squished together right, you'll get this flash, which is where the material will sort of squeeze between either halves of the mold. The more you know. Another thing that'll happen that is also to do with pressure and heat and all that good stuff is a thing called shift. I think it happens more with like metal models because you'll heat those molds up a lot more than plastic ones. It's where the two halves will actually become slightly unaligned, which will cause some very interesting things to happen. All right, so we've got the black on the frog. Gotta figure out what I'm doing with the eyes. They might just end up being white. Which I should have probably thought of before I covered the whole thing in black. That's okay. So we got multiple layers for. And I'm saying probably white just because I have white on my palette right now. So it's easy enough to just grab a little and slap it on there. I think whatever color I end up going with, starting it at white, I don't think would hurt me at all. So let's go ahead and just... Oh, this is such little bits. Ugh. Luckily, they're very protruding. If this thing didn't have eyes that protruded so much, I probably wouldn't bother with this. But because they stick like right out of its head, it's oh, sorry. There's a bit of like hair or something on there. I went to grab it and immediately just brushed off all the paint that I'd just gotten on there. Eh. Come on. Gotta get that white on that there eyeball. Come on, buddy. There we go. There we go. That might be enough. Well, we're going to go to the blue, and then we'll come back and decide if it needs more. Speaking of which... Oh, and I thought I was going to finish this too soon. We might not be able to get to both frogs. Hopefully we will, though. Hopefully we will. All right, so we're gonna start with a Sotek green, just because so much it looks pretty blue to me, honestly. So much of this guy is such like he has so many other it's greens and browns almost entirely. So having a little splash of blue on the top of his head, I think, will really be a point of interest. Give it a quick shake. Grab our little brush. Snag a little... Oh, that's a fun color. Excited to use that. I think that's why I've been so excited for these frogs. I've spent the entirety of this goblin doing very sort of drab, very sort of, earth tones. And now I finally get to play with more exciting colors. Which I'm excited for. We're going to go ahead and just stay with our character brush because we're into the weeds now. We're doing some details. So, for the frog, I want to give him sort of green spots. I might also just, you know what, let's start with this. I'm going to start with doing just some highlights on his fingertips. Just because I want to bring out the fact that that's a hand there. And so we'll go ahead and let this blue be my sort of assistant color with that. So I'm just going to do little stripes along his fingertips. That'll sort of bring back that idea of a frog there. I'll do that also on this side, although it's a little harder to see. There we go. A little bit of blue just to sort of bring those froggy fingers back. And I am thinking for this one I'll probably do a 2-layer just because I think that'll make it easier. So let's see. I'm thinking he's gonna have sort of a big sort of color splotch on the top of him, and then kind of 2 on the sides here. To the sides here. And then I think maybe like a little prong off the end. Almost like a little reverse heart. Yeah, that's delightfully poisony froggy looking. I like it. Now, that color is all well and good, but it's still kind of flat. So what we're gonna do is I'm so glad we're finally getting to this frog. It's been bothering me its color for a while now, so now let's add a little bit more body to this circle. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. We're making progress. So that's our base color. So let's go ahead and add another little bit of layer, little bit of little pizzazz. For that, we're gonna go to our Lothran blue, nice light blue, powdered blue. Go to quick shake. Snag out a little with the end of our brush. Onto the wet palette. And we can start adding details. Although, before we do, I think I might put just a little bit more of my base color in. It's not looking as just blue as I'd like it. You can see a little bit of the black through there. Also, because we're on such a very, like, the spear is really playing around with my... See, this is why I'm very glad I don't have an autofocus, because with that spear, it would be losing its mind. So the difficulty is I really don't want to make these little circles any bigger. I just want to make them darker. There we go. Just a little bit more blue. So then let's go ahead and so we'll clean off the brush. We're gonna hop over to our Lothran blue. And we're just gonna put a little bit in there. And kind of like with the bone, we're just gonna sort of hit the middle of each of these spots to sort of to really emphasize the color. Now what you could also do with this, if you wanted, would be to do some sort of light blue polka dots. But I think for this one, I just want to sort of just kind of add a little bit more to the color. So because I've got the green that you can kind of see through it, as well as around the edges, the Lothran blue has lightened it, so it really helps it pop. But the initial green will sort of change the color. So if I just put down the Lothran blue, it would have looked much lighter blue. And if I left it with just our Sotek green, it would have looked a little bit more green. But with the two, it really brings out the, both of the colors and creates a sort of a third interesting color. Actually, I'm very happy with that. That's nice. Can't forget to add just a little bit to the fingertips. Really help those little fingers pop. Now, I had forgotten about the frog face. I feel like we've neglected that frog face, so let's go ahead and add a little bit of green to the frog face. First, though, another gentle layer of white on those little froggy eyes. Try to really make sure they look actually white. Might make it a little bigger too. These are the frog's eyes after all. We should make them big enough they can see them. There we go. It's a little bit sort of misshapen, but not so misshapen, I think. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, and now it definitely needs... Ooh. Now, should we do something straight down the middle or something kind of across to imply a mouth? I'm kind of inclined to say something kind of across the middle to imply a mouth, so let's go ahead and see if we can't ruin this beautiful thing. No, it'll be fun. I think if we do it just along the bottom, right, oh, yeah, there we go. Right here. And I'm gonna try and put another color on top of that. Whew. Why would I do that to myself? What have I done? Alright, well that dries, because it's going to become very difficult to do. Let's go ahead and start on the other frog. Oh, I actually really like how those blues ended up turning out together. So we've got that. So now we're heading over to our Nagrath Knight, which is apparently purple. You wouldn't know from the name of the color, though. Give that a quick stir. Go ahead and snag out our color with our brush. Nope. I'm going to a little bit here because we are doing the whole of the other frog in this purple. Because again, he's very sort of earth tones. But I want those frogs to really pop up because he's got a frog on his head, for goodness sake. I feel like that should be a thing that we should talk about, you know? The guy's got a frog on his head. Alright, got a little water to thin down the purple. Spin the brush to point the tip. And then we'll jump into it. Now we got that little thumb there, so I'm gonna go ahead and start next to the thumb to make sure I don't get it. And this one has giant eyes, so we'll definitely need to do those. So I maybe should have started with my regiment brush, but I think this is fine. This will be fine. Finally unifying all of those colors after having let a bunch of random colors from other parts of the model get onto the frog. Now the frog will be its own unique frog. The idea for this one is we're going to do a purple body with the red limbs. Oh, that spear is in the way still. This one I'm definitely needing to be careful because there's a lot of a lot of contours and things that get very close to the hand. I want to maintain the difference between the frog and the hand. So many strange angles. This one's legs are a lot easier to sort of pick out than the other ones. And its toes, rather. We're not going to need to worry as much about really emphasizing the toes. Goodness. Who knew that frogs had so many angles on them? Alright. Can still see the green of the hand inside the where the frog's being held up, but the arms of the frog, and we don't have to worry as much about the arms because we're going to be going over them with a new color. I think that's good. Nice purple frog. So let's go back to our other frog. Since he is now dried, we're trying to put on a very, very thin line of our light blue, our Lutheran blue. This is when making sure the point of your brush is so very important. There we go. I'll just give him a little froggy smile. There we go. I like it. Alright, so that frog's looking good. Definitely looking nice and froggy. So then let's go ahead and turn back to this one, who is still sort of drying. Although, actually, that's an excellent point. So if you look at this frog, it has almost a bit of a shine to it, whereas this one's gotten kind of matte colored. I kind of want to hit it with a varnish to make it very, very shiny. But before that, because we're running low on time, but gotta let the purple dry because I don't want to mix my red and my purple. I want them to be two distinct colors. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to get the red on the palette, get it ready. Also, almost done with the eyes as well. So I'm going to put one more layer of that, of the yellow on the eyes, just to make sure it is extra yellow. Good mix of my colors. And what's nice is because we're doing such little things, we only need just little baby dollops of our colors just to make sure that they're on there. Back to this eye. So to add to the sort of derangedness of this guy's eyes, I'm thinking I'm definitely going to want to have each eye sort of looking in different directions, which means I need to have irises on them, which means I have to put irises on them. That's okay. I think in the end the effect will be what we're looking for. I feel like the big open eyes should be really looking at you, whereas the other one will be sort of looking off to the side. think for these limbs, I'm actually going to switch back over to my regiment brush. Sorry, the little froggy limbs, because there is so much to them. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the army painter brushes with the sort of thicker handles on them. Sorry, John was mentioning the brushes are nice, and yeah, I like that there's more to grab onto. I have a lot of different brushes, but yeah, these ones are very nice. All right, so a little bit of water. I heard a thing where if you've played World of Warcraft, there is you know what murlocs are. I've heard someone say that what they're saying is a little bottle of water. So something along the lines of a little bottle of water, kind of a thing. But who's to say? Alrighty, and we're just gonna get just the legs of the frog. Now there isn't actually like a proper line that distinguishes the frog's leg from the frog's rest of him. So we're gonna have to just sort of pick a line. Oh yeah, you can really see the purple coming through the red. Thin down just a little bit. Army Painter's Red also is a pretty opaque paint, so it'll sort of let the other colors through, which is fine. You just need to be aware of what your color is going to do when you start using it. Excuse me. And actually that being able to see a little bit of the purple through is going to be helpful when we start trying to get that transition between purple and red. Just going to make sure that the parts that we want to be red are red. Means, you guessed it, a couple of layers. Oh, boy. All right, so we got our first layer on here. We're gonna have to let that dry a little bit because I feel like I'm just pushing the paint around. So, back to the eyes. Of course, going to need our character brush. Grab just a little bit of the black. Ugh. I don't know if you know this, but I really hate doing irises. Luckily, this guy is meant to be sort of crazy-eyed. So it's okay if he ends up being a little crazy-eyed. Like, trying to make small circles is hard. There we go. Now he's starting to look at you. I feel like it'd be easier to paint cat eyes. Now for this eye, I want him looking up over here. And in an ironic twist, I think I got his eyes to basically be looking at the same thing. When you're trying to get eyes to look sort of normal on another model, you'll get them wall-eyed more often than not. Well, I've found anyway. And now, managed to get the Goblin to look at the same thing with both eyes. Actually, you know, I'm kind of okay with how that purple's looking. I might give it a quick crimson wash, but before I can do that, I do need to hit the eyes. The eyes of the frog, not the eyes of the goblin. His eyes have been got. Just like the other one, we're just going to take a little bit of white, and it looks like the eyes on this one are kind of on the side. I mean, I suppose that makes sense. Frogs are... Actually, I guess frogs are sort of predators, aren't they? They do... But they are also prey animals. It's hard to say. Also, if you didn't know, that's the difference between eyes on the side of the head versus eyes on the front. Predators need to look forward so they can hunt. Whereas prey keeps their eyes to the sides so they can see what's trying to hunt them. Also, I like that I've somehow accidentally managed to make this frog eye look sort of angry. Why are people licking me? Oh, alright. So we've got some eyes, we've got some frogs. Actually, you know what? I'm not too mad about that frog. He's kind of interesting. No, I need to hit him a couple spots because that knee part right here I'm not keen on. Just a little bit extra red. But I think we're about done. I mean, obviously we need to do the base of this guy and get it all cleaned up there, but as far as actually painting the goblin and the frogs and whatnot, I think that part's done. Yeah, this definitely needs a wash on the red part. Luckily, I have a crimson wash. You guys won't see that, but know that that's what I've done for the final step. Alrighty. Look at that. I saw the iris again. He is a crazed goblin. So here we go. Click this off real fast. This is our goblin frog toter. Toter? I'm sorry. The heat has really melted my brain, is the excuse I'm going to use. So we've got our guy here. He's got the frog on top with its sort of distinct color. We've got the frog in his hand with its distinct color. He's both green in his skin color, as well as the leaves and vines he has on him. So this is, I think, a really fun way to sort of look at how you can have two greens sat next to each other, but have them different. And yeah, that is our goblin. When we return next week, we're going to be returning to these guys. This is the clan invasion mechs. We're doing some final touches on the Mad Cat. Oh, and I've changed my focus already. There we go. We're gonna do the final touches on this guy. We've got the purples going, and then kind of show how we go from this to this guy with his very nice shiny purple. Also, I gotta figure out how to make this purple show better on the camera. I don't know what it is about this purple, but it doesn't show up nearly as well as I'd like. Oh, and then we'll also talk a little bit about rust and damage, just because I really enjoy having distressed models. Anyway, I hope you're staying cool out there. I hope you're staying safe. We will return next week for more painting. If you have any questions about the frog, or not the frog, the goblins, go ahead and let me know. There's a link to the wet palette in the description if you want to get yourself a wet palette. But until next week, stay safe, have fun, and I'll see you then. Bye.